I'm joined by Bridget Cogley. I am Joshua Milligan. You see some of our contact there, Twitter handles and blog sites. Definitely feel free to reach out to us anytime. We'd love to connect with you. Both Bridget and I are Tableau Zen Masters, which is the highest honor that Tableau bestows on people who not only have mastered the platform, but also are out there in the community trying to help people. And so we love to do that, and we'd love to help you with anything that you've got going on. Additionally, we are both employed by Teknion Data Solutions. We work as consultants working with clients all day long, and that is a lot of fun because we get to use Tableau, but we also work with a lot of people who use all sorts of other technologies, which is also a lot of fun. In fact, Bridget was just telling me about a project that she's doing with Data Robot, which does automates predictive analytics. Alteryx does all kinds of things from predictive to automation of data integration, Snowflake being a cloud data warehouse platform, Warescape being an automated data warehouse tool. Lots of great partnerships that we have, and all of that to help our clients and to help you solve any kind of data problem that you have. So feel free to reach out to Teknion, to Bridget and I. We'd love to work with you. All right, so today we're going to look at some of the new features of Tableau 2019.2. We might even throw in a couple from .1. I think Bridget might have something to show there as well. But a lot of really cool things just released, in fact, just last week by Tableau. Parameter actions, those are kind of getting all the headlines these days. We'll take a look at several different cases where those can be very helpful. Vector maps, you see the image there, that is a Tableau viz created in the tool itself. Show hide containers, lots of cool things you can do with those. Reference line tooltips, new spatial calculations, new Tableau server interface. We actually won't probably touch that one today. We're going to focus mostly on desktop, but the new server interface is incredible. And even a few more things that we'll throw in as we go. I'm going to turn it over to Bridget first to show us some really cool things. She gave me a sneak peek, and what she's going to show you is going to blow you away. So Bridget, it's all yours.
Well, thank you very much, Joshua. So I'm going to take it back a little bit to 2019.1 first. And one of the newest features put out with 2019.1 that I want to showcase is this new mobile layout. Now, sometimes I see on social media people either love this feature or really, really don't like this feature. And so one thing I want to very quickly go through and do is just show how we can make it work better for you. So by default, it takes everything and grabs that very first corner and reads kind of in a Z reading pattern. So when I look at this dashboard, it's grabbing my text box, it's grabbing my title, it's grabbing kind of some of the data art I've thrown in here, and then it's going to pull out any containers I've put in. So right now I've got these kind of KPIs put in containers, thinking maybe they'll stay together, and they don't. And then I've got some different charts that flow through, as well as some chart art. So when it goes to phone, we can see that it doesn't necessarily render the way that I want it. Now I can definitely go into the mobile and change the layout to something that I want, but there are ways to work with this and think about how to make the automated layout work a little bit better. So some of that is really stripping down any of that additional data art. And then combining your charts where appropriate as well. So for example, I've got these KPIs. Some people call them bands. And I've grouped these together so that they stay together. Same thing with these two. The other thing I was very, very intentional about when I designed this is I made sure to select the filter from the first chart. I want that filter up at the top. I don't want it down further. And so wherever you select to show that chart, so when we either click that button or we say, hey, I'm going to kind of put the filters out from here, that's what decides where that filter goes. So keep that in mind. And then lastly, I've got my charts. Again, really reduce the clutter. So that way, when I go to my phone layout, this actually looks just about exactly how I would have designed it. So this makes me incredibly happy. I don't have to touch or tweak this. So just by keeping those points in mind, so knowing when I want charts together, just building them together, minimizing the items that go with it, as well as selecting the filter from the first item. So making sure that that filter comes out with that first chart makes this automated layout work so much better. So that's kind of your 2019.1 dip. Moving on, one of the coolest things that Tableau did in 2019.2 is they gave us Mapbox by default. I really like Mapbox because you can zoom in, you can really see the detail, you can see kind of texture, you can get down into the roads. I find this really, really neat. I really like the experience. The maps themselves are very clean. One of the things that you'll notice, this is not just the standard base map. I did make a couple adaptations to it, but this is still part of the default map set that comes right in. So I've got the light template selected. The only thing I did was I said, you know what, I'm knocking out the base and I'm also setting it transparent. So I am going into the worksheet level, formatting, and just knocking out the background. So instead of it being by default white, I'm saying I want it to be none. That allows whatever background I have to show through. The other really nifty thing is that they gave us fold-out containers. And so if I remember to click my Alt button while I'm in developer mode, I can kind of see and build out text, and I can make these cool little things. Really like music, so this is just one sample work in progress. Now, that's great for kind of play, but what can we do with a real analysis? And I want to highlight probably my summer pastime, and that's Jenny's Ice Cream. And what I wanted to do was take everybody into a Jenny's ice cream shop. So this is kind of an example of what a shop looks like. You can see the tables. The blackboard is real, but the map is not. The map is data-driven. So as I explore the map and start looking at different shops, I've also reused the signage to highlight some of the KPI numbers. So this is really allowing me to let Tableau disappear and instead focus on the story I want to tell, to bring forward the analysis. So this is a great way if you're thinking for marketing or if you're thinking for infographics, you can start blending Tableau in. You can really let Tableau almost hide and make it feel like this is either a website or something else. You'll also notice as I hover over some of these items, it's telling me to click on the Jenny's logo for some fun. So again, you'll notice I've taken the button and I've hidden some things into it. So I've got the logo. You can set the button to custom images. So I've actually got two different images so that when it's hidden, I've actually made it more transparent. Or when it's shown, it's transparent. And then when it's regular, it's just the regular logo. And so I can put tooltips on there and encourage people to click it. And then I can also give it kind of that UI experience to where it feels like this is more of a web page than a dashboard. And I can start letting people explore and begin to understand where the ice cream shops are, and kind of just organically make their way through this dashboard. And then I can also allow that to be closed out. A couple other features that's hidden in a parameter action is I wanted to call out anything that was above a certain rating. So these locations had Google ratings associated with them. And so what I want to do is just figure out where the best Jennies would be. And surprisingly, the ones that get the highest ratings are not in central Ohio, but other places. So I do wonder if there's not a saturation effect that occurs when you have maybe several Jennies. I won't say too many, but I will say if you have quite a few choices, I do wonder if that affects the score. And then I also noticed that the ones that were rated about 4.5 are not a full Jennies. They're actually a partial Jennies. So they're ones that are open for the summer, and they tend to have a limited flavor selection. So I was able to just kind of find that by being able to explore the data and to know the data a bit. And then again, I wanted to be able to kind of find these things and explore. But I also wanted to be able to tuck it back in so that I wasn't constantly kind of drowned by a lot of noise. The other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to kind of highlight the story itself. So here's Jenny's Splendid Ice Cream, and then kind of to cite my sources and also make sure that I was cited as well. So I've got a lot of things hidden in here. One thing you'll notice with these collapsible containers and buttons, when you select them and you say, okay, I'm going to make this one, so you do have to do it with a container. So that's either a vertical container or a horizontal container. And then you set up your buttons. It's really kind of convenient for me. So I really like just the ability to edit the buttons, and then you can move the buttons around. So just because you have the container in one spot doesn't mean that the button has to be in one spot. You can move it around, you can put it where you feel it best works. And so, for example, this button is actually tethered to something all the way over here, so they don't even have to be in proximity to actuate. So that's kind of these items in a nutshell. One thing, again, I want to call out with the Mapbox is all the options you get to knock out the layers. And so to me, this is extremely powerful when you're dealing with an analysis, in that you can start knocking layers back. You can start saying, well, maybe I don't want that in there. I just want this coastline in there. And you can push things back a little further. For me, I wanted the kind of more generic, kind of abstract, where it looks a little chalky. And so having the layers set a certain way really worked out. But take a look at some of the new layers that you have available. You've got things like water labels, you've got points of interest, neighborhood, building footprints. So if you want to take a look at housing, or when we start getting into some of these more close-up maps, you can really see the roads and where things land. So that really was interesting to me. I personally also like the ability to knock out the background. And so that allows me to let everything kind of hide away. And so I'll go ahead and kind of jump through a few other things with the dashboard actions. So parameter actions are extremely powerful. And I want to kind of call out where this item is using a number of parameter actions. So what we're doing here, when we kind of jump through, I'm tethering this to two different data sources. So I've got a data source with the rating, and what this allows me to do is visually present these ratings here. So they're actually kind of hidden in the lights. If I wanted to, I could make them a little bit more visible by enabling their marks. And so you can see here where they are, so that you can see these ratings and then start filtering. So if you click on this, I've got it set via hover action. So I've got dashboard actions, and if I click on parameter 1, you'll notice this new icon. And if I click on edit, you can see that I've set this to hover. And then I've used the target parameter. So I've told it what parameter to update by using what field. So I'm calling on a field that's related to that parameter. And so what's key is that the data matches. So if you create a parameter from, that's extremely helpful. That allows it to kind of match the format and make sure that it's going to update correctly. So that's one way to use the parameters. And then with this, I've also set the map to also use some different parameters. And so if I go in here, I can kind of see this full address parameter, and I'm actually going to just go ahead and show it so we can see the addresses. And if I click through here, you can see all the different addresses. So if I were to manually select, it goes ahead and it updates that parameter that I've got used as a filter on a number of other spaces. So conventionally, we would have to have that drop down. With the new action sets, we no longer have to. So it's very, very handy. It's quite nice. And so it looks like Joshua is back, and I will go ahead and hand it off to Joshua.
All right, so thank you, Bridget. And yeah, I loved that dashboard. In fact, I hated to go after that because nothing I have to show is quite that flashy. But still some really cool features to cover. One thing that I've done before, in fact, I think I've even shared it on a webinar, is drawing a flight map. So looking at the flight paths that occur from one airport to another. And a lot of times using Tableau, at least in the past, you had to use a line and then you had to use this path shelf, and that was fine, it worked, but it did often require a little bit of reshaping of the data, because what that requires is a record for the origin and a record for the destination. Well, most data sets are not that way. Most data sets, you have a destination and an origin all in the same record. In fact, if I look at this data set, that's exactly what happens. I have a destination here, an origin, those are the airport codes, and then if I keep going, I've got the latitude and the longitude for both, and they're all in the same record. That's pretty typical. So used to be I'd have to split that out either in the data source screen here in Tableau, or maybe I'd go to Tableau Prep. But now what I can do is I can use some built-in geospatial functions that are right here in Tableau. And so if I create a calculated field, we can see the functions. Let's see, it's on the other screen. Here it comes. And that actually shows up as a new type of calculation, spatial. Right now, there's only two spatial functions. I would imagine that new releases will reveal even more, which will be exciting. But this is exciting enough for me for now, and that is that I've got two functions here: make point and make line. Well, my goal is to draw those flight paths. So ultimately, I'm going to want to make a line. But as I look at that, I realize that the make line takes 2 points. And I don't have any points specifically in this data set. What I do have are latitude and longitude. So if I look at make point, I realize that I can actually make a point with a latitude and longitude. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to, let's start with my destination. So destination point. I'm going to make point, and it's looking for the latitude first and then the longitude. And so that's all there is to it, just to make a single point for the destination. I'll say OK, and you can see that that now shows up here. It is a geospatial field, and if I were to look at that specifically and describe it, it's going to tell me that it is well, it doesn't actually say it's geospatial. The icon itself tells me that. I'll do the same thing for the origin. Create a calculated field and origin point. We'll make the point from the origin latitude and origin longitude. And I'll say OK there. Now I've got the 2 points. Now I can create the line. So one final calculation field here, and this will be my flight path itself. We'll make a line with the starting point, the origin, and the ending point, the destination. And so that's all it is to make the line. I'll say OK. And now I've got this nice geospatial field for the path itself, and if I were just to double click it, Tableau draws the paths. And so you'll see that it shows up there. Now, interestingly, if I hover over it, you see it's all one kind of mark at this point. And I can even verify that by looking down in the lower left. So it's combining all of those geospatial objects into one, because I haven't split it out, but I can. I can take the route, and if I just put that on the detail, now each one of these is a separate route. And you can see here's DFW to Seattle. And in fact, I may want to call out those destinations. So I'll hold down on Control and drag and drop latitude so that I can get the start of what's going to be a dual axis map. Here on the marks card, I'll select the second one, and instead of using the flight path geography, and I can leave route there, but I'll put the destination out there, and in fact, that's an airport code. So I'll tell Tableau that. I'll say geographic role is airport, and once I do that, now it can define the latitude and longitude specifically for each airport. It's just using these generated latitude and longitude. I could even put that maybe on the label itself and make that a dual axis. Now I can see the destination for each of those, and maybe even color code by where it's coming from, either Dallas Love Field or DFW. And so lots of different possibilities that you could use this kind of geographic geospatial functions for. And I love the fact that the lines are curved. It's not just drawing a straight line, but it is actually following the curve of the Earth. So really, really cool to start to see some native geospatial functions show up in Tableau. So make line, make point. The big feature that everyone on Twitter is talking about, that everyone wants to learn about, is parameter actions. So let's think about parameter actions, and we'll create several of them as we do. I'm going to switch over to a data set here that is it's the S&P 500 over time. So we'll take a look at that. Here's the S&P 500 value, and if I just right-click, drag and drop, I'll just select a continuous date so that we can see it throughout all of history, starting way back in the 1800s. I'm more interested with recent stock prices, so I'm going to drag and drop the filter here and do a range of dates. Let's come up to somewhere around 1980. Yeah, 81's fine. So I'll say okay, and there's stock prices from 81 all the way up to not quite present day, but pretty close, a month ago. And you'll notice that each one of these is just the month. It's month by month, so I don't know if that's the stock price at the end of the month or more research to do on the data set itself. But what I'm really kind of wanting to understand is if I had invested at a certain point in time, how much percent increase would I have seen? Well, I can get the percent increase in Tableau pretty easily, so I'm just going to duplicate the field here just to show that I can come down and just do a quick table calculation, and one of the options is percent difference. Now that gets kind of crazy because that's showing me the percent difference month by month. So what's the percent difference from one month to the next? Definitely some that stand out more than others. But that's not exactly what I want to know. I want to know what if I had invested at the very beginning of this line. So I can use the drop down and say relative to the first, and that would be the first mark in the line. Now the lines are identical, although the second is actually a percentage. So you can see that the tooltip and the axis are showing that that's the percentage change from the very first one, which is 0, which is what we'd expect. And in fact, I'll now take this. That was helpful to see it as I worked on it, but I'll actually put that just on the label of the top line so that I can see the percentages. And I don't want to see all of them. I just want to see the end of the line. So if I had invested in 1981, I would have seen almost a 2,000% return. So that's really cool. Of course, that's quite a few years. So what if I had invested in 2000, or what if I had invested in 2009? What would my percent growth have been? Well, one way that we've often tackled these kind of problems in Tableau is to create a parameter. So if I create a parameter, and let's just call it date selected. So I would create a date parameter. Let's set it to the first, since all of those dates are the first, but let's put it somewhere in the middle, 2010, and say, okay, so that's just our initial value. Oh, it already exists because, no, it doesn't. Where is it? I don't see a date selected parameter. Well, let's call this select a date then. And call this a date, call it 2010, and May 1st, 2010 is our default. So I'll say OK, and there's the parameter selected date. I could even add a reference line to show the value of that parameter, format it however I want, show the label of it however I want. So I'll just show the date. But this is new in 2019.2, the fact that I can have a tooltip. Before, I had no control over it. I would just get whatever tooltip Tableau generated, but now I can even have a custom tooltip that allows me to put in whatever I want. So what if I had invested on, and then we'll actually show the date, so the value, question mark, and I'll say OK. So notice that that is the tooltip there. And now what I want to do is I want to take this this calculation and change it to use the parameter. So a couple of things that I need to do there. One is to actually get this calculation. So I use the drop down to create a quick one, but I want to actually get that as a calculated field now. So I'll drag it and drop it over here. And so this is my percent difference. Notice that that switches it even in the view. If I edit it, I can see how Tableau created that. So it's taking the stock value and it's looking up the stock value, the very first one. So the current one minus the first one divided by the first one gives us the percent difference from the first. What I want to do is I want to replace these first references with whatever the offset is to the selected parameter date. So wherever I am on this line, I want to know how many months away from the selected date am I. So that's another calculation, but a fairly simple one. So date offset. So we'll just do a date difference in months, since every point on the line is a month, and then we'll take the date. I'm going to make it an aggregation because I'm going to use it in the table calc later. So I'll use it as a minimum date. No matter where I am on the line, the minimum date is just that date. I could have selected maximum as well, and it would have also been the same. And so that's our date that we want to start with, and then we want to compare how many dates away that is from the selected date parameter value. I'll say OK. And now I'll go back to the percent difference calculation, edit that one, and replace these first values with that offset. So the date offset now, instead of first, we just want to look up what the value was when I selected the date. And I'll say OK. And notice that from October 1st, 2013 to 2018, about 134% increase. That's not bad. And now I could have done all of this in previous versions of Tableau, except for the tooltip on the reference line. And then I could have shown the parameter control and just allowed the user to select a different parameter, and whatever I selected then would potentially shift that that reference line. But it's not shifting it. Why not? Well, let's make sure I grab the right. Yeah, it thinks there's a parameter there that I created earlier. So we'll make sure the reference line is right there. Now it should shift the line. And sure enough, it does. And as I shift the line, I see the resulting percent change. So that's how I could have previously created user interface, but it's kind of clunky because the user has to go over here, use a calendar drop down, maybe hopefully they choose the first of the month. I guess it doesn't really matter, but it's a little bit confusing that there's a bunch of dates in the calendar that don't even apply when it's month by month. So what if I could use an action to change the value of the parameter? Well, that's all a parameter action is. Since I'm working on the worksheet, I'll select worksheet actions. If I was on a dashboard, I would select dashboard actions. It's grayed out because I'm on the worksheet, so worksheet actions. And I will add a new action here. I have several different possibilities. Filter, highlight, and go to URL. Those have been there in Tableau for a long, long time. But now there are some new ones. There's go to sheet, which is a navigation action. There's change set values, which was released a version ago. And there's lots of cool things you can do with that. But here's what I want, change a parameter value. And here I can give it a name, especially if it's going to show up on a menu. I might really care to do that, but I might also just want to keep track of what the action is. I'm going to set the date. We'll do it on a selection, and then I have to tell it what parameter am I targeting. Well, I'm targeting the selected date parameter. And then what field am I using to set the value? Well, here it's just the date. I just want to set the date, and that's the only field that shows up, even though I also have a value and a percent here, but that's the only one that matches the type of the parameter, so date. Aggregation, I can choose to send an aggregate value to the field. So if I was setting a numeric value and I wanted it to be the sum of sales or the sum of the stock price, I could do that. Here, I just want it to be the date itself, so no aggregation, and I'll say OK, and OK again. And now I should have a very nice interface that whatever point I click, that sets the parameter value, and you can see the parameter value changes as I click, as well as the reference line and that end value. So if I had invested at the very bottom of the recent financial crisis, I could have made a nice return on investment. If I had invested right before things bottomed out, I still would have come away doing okay as long as I'd kept my money in the market. If I had invested at the very top recently, well, then I'm probably not too happy right now, but we'll see. We'll see how things turn out. Hopefully good. So this allows all kinds of new interactivity, because you'll notice that I'm able now to drive actions that can actually change things on a single sheet, and so that works out really well. A couple of other examples. I've already got this one set up, and in fact, there is a blog post that you can take a look at on vispainter.com, which does actually show a previous iteration of this, where you could, not the flight paths, where did it go? Let's search again, just distance maybe. It's actually the very first blog post ever written here, and it's not showing up. Mapping distances, there we go. And so this kind of walks you through the process of creating this this map where you have a parameter that you can select any city and state, and then it will calculate the distance to every other mark on the map. And you can see it's kind of slow, kind of doesn't work as well. That was years ago when we created that one. Now in 2019.2, I can do the same sort of thing, but the parameter value doesn't have to be selected from a drop-down or typed in the text box. Now I can actually just create an action that populates the parameter value from the selection. So Let me make sure I've got the right field in the sheet. I need my city and state together. I'll put that on the detail. I'll even put it as an attribute so it doesn't mess up the table calculation. And now if I create the action here, I'll change the parameter value, and we'll do the city and state selection, and we'll do the attribute value, no aggregation, and say okay and okay. And now when I select a city, it should, oh, look at that, it doesn't work because I broke it, I think. Oh, here we go. Let's make sure I've got my table calculation set up correctly. And try again. There we go. Now you'll see. Well, yeah. I see the parameter value changing. All right. You'll just have to take my word for it. It was really cool. But I'll have to see what I broke as I made last minute changes. All right. But you could get it to work where instead of selecting from a drop down, you would select just on the viz itself, and things would update. All right, so between technical difficulties and everything else, let's hope this last one goes a little bit more smoothly. I'm going to create just a couple of views. So just sales by state. So I've got my state here. I'll double click and just drag sales in here to create a nice filled map. And I love Bridget's point about washing things out and taking away backgrounds. I love just to take the full background away with a 100% washout there. So I've got my sales by state, and then maybe a nice bar chart of states, because sometimes on a choropleth map, it's hard to see exactly which state has the most or the second most or the third most, but it's not hard at all on a sorted bar chart to see how things are lining up. So California, then New York, then Texas, and so on in terms of sales. And then I might want to use these on a dashboard. So I've got my distance by state. Let me undo real quick and put these in a layout container. So I'm going to put horizontal layout container there, and then sales by state with my bar chart next to it. And my goal here is to use a parameter to allow the user to select which way they want to see sales by state. Do they want to see it as a map or as a bar? So let's go back and create that parameter. And we'll call that viz type. And we'll just make it a string value so that we can just pass that in, either map or bar. And currently selected as map, so that's great. We'll show it, and we'll create a calculated field here so that we know which one is selected, so which viz type was selected. And I'm going to use that as a filter so that the map only shows when you have map selected. And when we come over here to bar, we'll show the parameter control. And so when I select bar, that's the only one I want selected. So I'll come up here and place that in filter and select bar. And notice now that when I go back to sales by state map, it's blank. And with the bar, if I were to change it to map, it goes blank, but now the map shows. And now on my dashboard, whichever one has the parameter selection works, and which or shows, and whichever one does not is filtered out. So viz type selected. Let's show that as a drop down. And we've got a map selected now. Wait, nope, that's not what I want. Not that one, I want the parameter. Parameter viz type. So map or bar. Wait, yeah, I messed up my my filter there. So viz type selected, only map, but hopefully not bar. Aha. So now it should be working fine. That works. I'm going to hide the titles so that they can expand into the entire layout container. So I've got the map and the bar. Now, I could have done that with previous versions of Tableau, and again, I've got this this parameter drop-down, which works, and it's okay. But what if I could make it a much nicer interface? I'm actually going to just grab a screenshot of the map and then save that as a custom shape in my Tableau repository. So I've got a shapes directory, and I'm going to create a new shapes folder here of viz type. And we'll save this one as the map. And then let's do the same thing with the bar. I'll grab a quick screenshot of just a few bars. And we'll save that as the bar chart image. And now, one last thing is I want to create just a quick visualization that shows me one or both of those. So I'm going to just create that really quickly. Just a quick notepad here, viz type to show, and it's either a map or a bar. Select Control C to copy, back in Tableau, Control V to paste, and oh, it wanted to use all of those, so that's fine. We just need the viz. Let's do a shape, and on that shape, we'll take viz, put that on shape, edit, and reload shapes so that we can find our new custom shape of viz type. And we'll just assign it. So the bar matches, the map matches, and we'll say OK. Now that's not too exciting to look at really small, but you can see they do actually show up with either the map or not. I'm going to turn off tooltips because there's no need to see the tooltips. And I'll just call this select a view. Back in my dashboard, I will take that sheet and place that over here. Let's not look at that. Maybe give it a little bit more space. Maybe even get it to slide up a little bit more. Well, we'll even go in here and just bump up the sides a bit. There we go. Get rid of the legend. We don't need that. We even don't need to show the parameter control now. What we do need to do is to allow the user to select the view itself. So on the dashboard now, I will set an action that will change the parameter value based on the selected view sheet, and we'll target the viz type parameter. We'll target it with the viz, no aggregation. I'll say OK and OK again, and now as I select one, it will set that parameter value and allow me to see the view itself. So lots of possibilities in terms of how you can use that to drive a parameter value, and how you can use that for all kinds of new user interface options, new interactivity. The sky's the limit on how you can use that kind of feature. So I'm loving that as a good option, and lots of possibilities. With that, Bridget, we'll open it up for questions. I think there are some already, and we'll start going through that. The first one looks like it may be for you, Bridget.
I
Is
think
Mapbox available for Canadian maps?
and the answer, and I can actually go ahead and share my screen and show it definitely is. And let me just say it works quite well because I've been able to find a couple landmarks that are important to me. And so there we go. So this is kind of what it looks like. So when you zoom in, you can see that, for example, if I move things over, I can very quickly find the Canadian airport. So this is the Vancouver airport. I can then follow Trans-Canada Highway 1 and take it through to a lot of places that I go. So I mean, if I zoomed in on Abbotsford, I could possibly find the Earls there if I really wanted to dig. So definitely can go through and find a lot of places and kind of call out places I've been, but you can see how as we zoom in, we get to street level. If you've got the right selection set up, you can actually get to where you can see buildings and call out of parks and things like that. So yes, it definitely does. Mapbox is also continuing to expand what's visible. And when you use a lot of the mapping features available, that is one way to definitely get a good level of accuracy as well. So it does help to use some of those geometric shapes or to get a geocoder that really gets it right. And then a couple of questions I also saw was just about how to do the hidden button. So if I drag out another container, so I'll just take a vertical container, I'll make sure I hit floating just because I've got this set up. It's going to be a little bit messy, but if I just go ahead, pull and expand this box, and I'll move it away from my other one just to avoid any confusion. One thing I can do though is I can add the show and hide button. So Tableau really seems to be doing a lot with these buttons. Initially I was not bought in, but I will say I am a fan today. And so you'll notice I now have this button, and if I select this button, I can edit the button. And by default, Tableau gives me kind of this X, and if I go ahead and exit out of it and hit the Alt button to, by default, it gives me a hamburger. So that's really cool to me, is that by default, the icons they selected are pretty good. And then from there, I can either choose an image if I want, and so I can go through my gallery and I can pick a koala for the one that's there. And then I can also, for one that's hidden, I can either pick the same koala, or I'm going to go ahead and do penguins because those are actually my favorite animal. And so now you can see I've got my koala, not big enough, so I'll go ahead and make the koala bigger. And if I hit the Alt key and just click and hide that container, you can see that that container jumps in and out. So that's how you've got control. But again, by default, the icons are pretty good and wisely selected. That made me quite happy.
All right, cool, Bridget. There's a question about will this be recorded? So the answer is yes. Now we'll see with the technical difficulties that we have experienced whether we've got a good recording or we'll figure that out. But yes, look for a link in the next day or two, and if not, we'll let you know what the plan is. And will we share our workbooks, Bridget?
Yes, mine is already available to share. So I've got the Jenny's workbook out here, and then the other one that I've got is the experiments with the mobile dashboard and design that I showed. So I've got these here available, and then again, just some more mobile work that I've done as well.
Very cool. I will also plan on sharing mine. I'll get that ready, and mine is not there. Bridget is so much ahead of me. But I will show you the last question. I'm going to grab presenter here real quick, and could you show us how to create the clipboard? Yeah, I went through that really fast, but all I did was just create just really quickly typed into a notepad, viz type to show without thinking of the fact that Tableau is going to look at the spaces and think that that's different fields. So really it just turned it out to be just typed in viz as the name of the field, and then the values that I wanted, map and bar. Control A to select all, Control C to copy to the clipboard,
Joshua,
and
do you
then
want to go
back
ahead
in
and share your
Tableau.
screen?
Oh, good night. I thought it was showing. All
There
right,
we go.
perfect. So yeah, so here we go. Back in Notepad, viz as the name of the field, and then map and bar as the values that I want. Control A to select all, Control C to copy, and then back in Tableau, Control V creates the clipboard data source with those already there. I don't always recommend doing it that way because now that's stored in a temporary location, and if I changed my mind and wanted to add new viz types, that's going to be a little bit harder. But for a real quick and easy way, I love the fact that I can paste data into Tableau and it creates the data source for me. One last thing that I'll show real quick, some things that I've been playing around with parameter actions. I always wanted to make a Minesweeper game in Tableau, but I couldn't do it. There was just always a little bit of a technical hurdle until I realized that parameter actions would allow me to keep track of the actions taken on the board. So this is a viz in Tableau. And as I click, I am setting a parameter value. You can see there it's just setting that string, and each time I click on a new string, it's building out the string more and more. I'll have a blog post on how this was done at some point, but I did want to show off parameter actions are incredibly powerful. Here's my flag string that tells Tableau where I've placed my flags, and so I can just keep going, and then oops, hit a mine, and that's the end of that until I clear out the parameter values, and I could start again. But I'll have more to show on that at some point. But parameter actions are amazing. All right. Well, we will see you again next time. Look for the survey link and let us know what would be useful to you and what you'd love to see us cover. We'd love to get that feedback. Also, let us know wherever we can improve, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.